Academica Media. From Academica Media Studios in Miami, Florida, it's Big Ideas in Education, a weekly recap of inspiration and innovation in your schools.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Big Ideas in Education. I am your host, Dr. Sarah Boulos from Somerset Academy Schools, joined by my co-host, Ryan Kairalla of Doral College. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Sarah. Good to see you.
It is great to see you. And welcome to what I surprised Ryan by informing him is our 150th episode. Thank
That's
you
all
for
the
that.
budget we have to celebrate this. We just blew our whole budget for the year. Just
There it is.
Right, on that sound effect.
All the way in January, we're done for the year.
That's right. It's gonna be really lean for the next 11 and a half months around here.
It is. So no pressure, Ryan, but what did you bring today to celebrate this momentous occasion?
I like to think I have a story that is worthy of this monumental moment in podcasting. All right, this is a cool one. So as we're working on our courses for the spring semester, Sarah, which I am in the thick of right now, the semester starts on Monday. I got to get my classes together. But many of us in the education profession are involved in that well-known tradition, that thankless task of figuring out how we're going to set up grading for our course. How are we going to grade our students? How many grades? How much is each assignment worth? And one educator this year has taken a very different approach to setting up their grading. And that's by getting rid of grades entirely. In EdSurge last week, college professor David Clark wrote about his experience in ungrading in his upper-level geometry course. Borrowing ideas from Susan D. Blum's book of the same name, Clark set up his class where he would only give feedback on student work with no assignment grades. At the end of the class, he had his students do a self-evaluation describing how well they felt they met the course goals, have them present a portfolio of their work to the teacher, and then decide for themselves what their final course grade would be. What was the end result? Well, Professor Clark noted that his ungraded course was, quote, the best semester of geometry I've ever taught. Students were energetic, interested, and asked great questions, engaged in excellent collaboration. They willingly struggled, failed, reflected, tried again, and did an amazing job of supporting each other, unquote. By shifting the focus away from grades, Professor Clark said that his students focused more on engaging in the material and embracing the feedback processes that he built into the course to reinforce learning. Students were able to resubmit homework assignments to get additional feedback and boost their learning, and the written objectives that Professor Clark put in assignments would give students clearer directions for improvement than a simple letter grade. For somebody like me, who I would say already has a skeptical relationship towards like the whole grading industrial complex that we have in education. And I do tend to think that grading, gets students looking at the wrong thing and aiming towards the wrong target in the learning process because they're not learning for learning's sake when you put those evil 5 letters in front of their face. I was intrigued by this. I mean, obviously this is way more revolutionary than some of the things I've done in grading to kind of dabble into it, where like I'll let students resubmit assignments and things like that. He's way over on the other side of it, but I can't help but be intrigued by some of his thoughts on what's happened to his geometry course. What do you think? Ungrading.
I almost thought this was going to be a psychology professor or a sociology professor when you told me what the topic was, but I think it's really interesting that it's a math course that was put through this process.
Yeah, something so quantitative. You would
Right.
think they'd be the last ones to go into ungrading, but here we are.
That's exactly why. And so I mean, which shows a little bit of my bias, right? I think, the math teacher may not be comfortable with that. But yeah, it's really interesting to me that such a numbers centric field would be interested in doing this, and that they would see to describe it as the most successful semester they've had. I find that really, really interesting. There is a part of me as a teacher that's wondering, how did that teacher measure success, right? So what was a measure of success? The feedback that they saw over time, they saw improvement in the students' understanding. I'm assuming from that, right?
Yeah, well, because so he replaced a lot of the rubrics that we tend to associate with grading with clear objectives that he would set for the students. So the
Okay.
students had clear expectations, not just in each individual assignment, but in the course as a whole. And as part of what the students did, they had to self-reflect and assess the extent to which they met those objectives and have a dialogue with their teacher
Got it.
about how those objectives were met. And to me, the dimension of this that I find most intriguing, which whether intentionally or not, with the way that Professor Clark built his course, that I think is cool, is the self-advocacy that comes into it as students, where I feel like the very act of not just presenting a portfolio to your professor, but discussing that portfolio and advocating to your professor about why you felt you've met the objectives, there's learning in that too. I think that builds self-confidence. And I feel like you can't engage in that advocacy process without actually learning some of the material along the way, because you need to be able to make a credible argument to your professor that I actually met these objectives. And when you actually, when you become your own evaluator and it has to make it through your own evaluation prism first before you bring it to your professor, I feel like learning happens there. And
Definitely.
whether or not you fully endorse the ungrading approach, or whether or not your school or your school district will let you get rid of grades entirely, which I know there's a whole other ball of wax there, I think there's something to learn from Professor Clark's story in terms of the role that self-reflection can play and the role that back and forth feedback can play between student and teacher to facilitate that learning process.
So hearing a little bit more about it, it does sound a lot to me like mastery-based grading, right? Standards-based grading, where it is the kind of, I mean, when we hear something like ungrading, it sounds like, oh, we're just throwing everything out the window, right? So it's like, well, what's the alternative? The alternative is not no feedback or, just put whatever you want on the paper and everybody gets an A. It really is about helping students to identify for themselves what the learning target is, how, like you said, to what extent they've gotten there, and what else they need to still learn. I love what you said about advocacy. I think that helping students to identify why we're doing something is so critical. And this is something that I encourage a lot when I coach teachers and principals, is helping students to see the relevance of it. Now, what I find additionally interesting with all that information is you hear standards-based grading as a very popular tool with elementary schools. And elementary schools in a lot of school districts have switched from from the traditional A through F grading system or numerical grading system to a standards-based system where they just might have like a 1 through 4 to what, have they mastered this skill or not? Have they mastered this content or not? When we see it in older grades, or we haven't seen it, I think, to a very large extent in older grades, when in my mind as an educator, it feels more and more relevant, right? So the older you get, the more you would kind of want to tie what they're learning to real life, right? We've all seen those memes about like day 437 where I haven't used algebra or something, like all these ridiculous things.
Yeah, I don't know how to do my taxes, but I know that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Right. These kinds of things where if we were to move to more of a standards-based system in middle and high school, I think that would be a real relevancy indicator for students and for teachers, right? So why are we doing this? Well, these are the skills that you need to move on. So that really excites me. And I think there's a lot to explore there.
Yeah, I think it's really cool too. And I would imagine that the laziest critique, but probably a very popular critique that one might have from the ungrading philosophy is, oh, these are just lazy teachers who don't want to grade. And certainly,
oh my goodness,
I
it's
would love
so
to
much
be,
more work.
Absolutely, right? Can you, like, the back and forth feedback, having to engage each student one by one? Like, one of the reasons why I think the grading world has existed for so long in education is because of how efficient it is. And with that efficiency, you're losing communication with your student. You're losing perhaps a opportunity to allow kids to get better mastery and to learn for the sake of learning. But it's certainly not easier.
I'm going to push back a little bit on the word you said of efficiency. I don't know that it is efficient if we think about what grading really is. And I often ask new teachers, what is a grade to you? Not to get too like educational philosophy, but that is a question that I've asked many teachers. What do you think a grade is? It's a symbol, right? It's a representation. It's a communication to the child, to their family, to yourself, to what extent they have mastered this material, right? How are they doing on this? And when we think about that, I don't know that the traditional A through F system is the most efficient way to communicate that. So, I'm sure we could spend, I'm seeing your face like, what? Maybe I'll just take a step back there.
No, I'm on the other side of this. I want to do a 10-part podcast series on what is a grade. And just get real deep into it, like find all the education PhDs we can and just get really philosophical about it.
That will be a chapter in my upcoming book. No.
Well, I'm pretty excited for your story as well for our fabulous milestone episode here of Big Ideas in Education. What do you have for us? I love this.
Well, I feel like I've been mentioning recently how there are so many unsung heroes in the school building, and oftentimes their contribution to our students' success is not always noticed. But the United States Department of Education is trying to recognize the contribution of such employees who make a big difference for school communities through the RISE Award. Recognizing Inspiring School Employees, or the RISE Award, was developed to recognize and promote the commitment and excellence exhibited by full or part-time classified school employees who provide exemplary service to students in pre-kindergarten through high school. Classified school employees include paraprofessionals, clerical and administrative services, transportation services, food and nutrition services, custodial and maintenance services, security services, health and student services, technical and skills trade professionals. They offer essential services to the school community and play a vital role in providing for the welfare, safety, and success of students. Secretary of Education Cardona bestowed the first of these honors to Melito Ramirez, an intervention specialist at Walla Walla High School in Washington State. And now each state has the opportunity to nominate their choice for 2022's award. The governor of Ohio, for example, has already submitted 2 candidates. 2 special education paraprofessionals, Andrea Beeman at Maple Heights High School in the Maple Heights City School System, and Phil Tudor. They were both chosen on the basis of several criteria: work performance, school and community involvement, leadership and commitment, local support, and enhancement of classified school employees' image in the community and schools. This is all on top of the fact that they are special education paraprofessionals. I would like to say congratulations to Andrea Beeman and Phil Tudor and to all other nominees.
Well, now we've really blown through our budget.
I'm excited to see which of them is chosen as the 2022 awardee, which they only pick one for the year, and they use them as an example to learn best practices and inspirational goals for the entire United States. It's really exciting.
So the focus of this award is to highlight the professionals in schools outside of traditional classroom teachers.
That's right.
Right. Which
outside of traditional classroom teachers and administration.
Oh, you mean that? Tell me that doesn't just stay along.
I mean,
with
we're
the theme
talking
of-
about bus drivers, food service. Like, how many times have I said like you need the front desk and the cafeteria workers? All those people are like the ones. Well, maybe I haven't said it on the show, but that's some little behind the scenes advice I give to new teachers: is make friends with the person at the front desk and make friends with the cafeteria workers.
Well, my mom, the longtime public school volunteer, used to say that the one friend you need to make on every school campus is the custodian, because they're the one with all the keys.
Ah, that's a great point. Yes.
so
and
great first-year teacher advice there.
I was going to say, as a teacher who was often there when the lights got turned off, I made a lot of friends with custodians because they were always there to tell me it's time to go home.
No, that's very, very important. What a great philosophy for an award, right?
Yeah.
Certainly, classroom teachers and administrators, particularly right now these days, don't feel particularly appreciated. But when we often think about who are the first individuals that we do celebrate in the education setting, it is the teachers and administrators. But the folks that are really unrecognized, but as we've often discussed on this program, whose contributions are so critical to making schools effective, we don't highlight those folks enough. So I think the idea of an award that specifically focuses on these unsung heroes, and I love how broad of a swath they take, recognizing that it's everybody, right? It's the bus drivers, it's the paraprofessionals, it's the cafeteria employees, it's the custodial workers. All those people are so valuable to effective student education. I love that we have an award for them. So cool.
Absolutely. Well, we are so grateful to have had you with us for the past 150 episodes. I can't believe it. I think maybe the time has really gone quickly, especially considering almost 2 years of that has been pandemic related. I don't know how we do it, but
we've done more pandemic episodes than non-pandemic episodes at this point, right?
You're absolutely right. Now that you say it, I'll look back at my numbers, but I think you are correct, sir. It's hard to believe. But thank you for being on this journey with us in highlighting inspirational stories from all across the educational space, K-12 and beyond. If you'd like to join the conversation with us, give us a little shout out or just give us a idea or an opinion, feel free to do so using the hashtag BigIdeasInEducatioon. You can find us on Twitter at Academica Media. You can find me at Read with Fi. You can find Ryan at Ryan Kair. As I look to Ryan because it's been a while since I've mentioned those.
We haven't brandished our socials in a while. I had to think about it myself. What is my Twitter handle?
Wait a minute. I think I forgot. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.